I think generally there are two lessons that preachers attach to the parable of the Good Samaritan, or actually the fairly decent Samaritan, because no mere mortal is of themselves good, of course. The primary lesson of the Good Samaritan is obviously always understood to be that we ought to copy the Good Samaritan. We have to find people on the road and seek to help them. And I would say that is indeed the primary purpose of this tale. Loving your neighbour is not merely about having goodwill towards someone. Often a second lesson is attached to it, and that is a lesson about racism. Obviously, racism is bad. But the perceived lesson about racism in the text is based on a misunderstanding. Obviously, you are reading this text and you see one group of people hating another group of people, and you are like, I see what's going on here. The Jews were racist against the Samaritans. And maybe you even feel so free as to picture the man on the road as some racist white man who is humiliated by the help of some saintly black man. Now that is a nice story, and feel free to tell this version of the tale to your racist relative. But he will probably tell you that he doesn't discount the possibility of a rare exceptional black man, and he will continue to be racist. It's a nice variation of the story, but you are somewhat misunderstanding the nature of the relationship between Jews and Samaritans. Where exactly it is that the Samaritans came from as a distinct people group separate from Jews depends on who you ask. Basically, everyone, however, agrees that they are at least relatively closely related to Jews. Samaritans themselves believe themselves to descend from the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. So thinking of the hostility between Jews and Samaritans in terms of racism, as we know it in our modern cultural context, is rather incomplete. Obviously, ideas about blood purity do play a role. In antiquity, Jews believed that Samaritans had mixed with Gentile nations. I would argue, however, that this is not so much the agitator of the conflict, but more an elaboration of it. Because in the actual Hebrew Bible, mixing with other nations happens without it being seen as a problem. King David himself even, as we all know, has a great-grandmother who was a Moabite. But obviously Ruth becomes an Israelite because she chooses the God of Israel as her God. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So in and of itself, it needn't be a problem for a well-catechized Jew that another Israelite caught some foreign DNA. But that would be a notable fact when you notice some kind of heterodox religiosity in their community. Yes, then you can say, these motherfuckers over there, they've been mixing with Gentiles, and as a result they have adopted all manner of heterodox religiosity. So when Josephus others the Samaritans by claiming they are descended from other nations, I think he is not being racist in the way that we understand it today. Rather, he is providing a, to him, plausible explanation for why this heterodox group exists. So what, I guess this is somewhat relevant, is the nature of the heterodoxy of the Samaritans? Luckily, the Gospel of John gives a degree of insight already. When Jesus is speaking with a Samaritan woman, she says this, "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." End quote. There's much I can say about the "you Jews" thing, by the way, because it's interesting to find this in the Gospel of John, but maybe another time, most likely not. Now, if you don't know anything about this, you may think the Samaritans must have a mighty strange hermeneutic to come to the conclusion that Scripture teaches that they ought to worship God on Mount Gerizim like they do. But here's the thing. They actually generally have a different version of the Pentateuch, or Pentateuch, if you prefer to pronounce it sillily. Moreover, they are missing the other Hebrew writings. I think we need to be aware of how grave a difference this is. Like, in Christianity, it is relatively rare for groups that are considered heretical to have a substantially different Bible. Obviously, we do have larger and smaller biblical canons within Christianity. We also have a huge variety in how patristic writings are regarded and which church fathers are given priority. These are obviously serious differences for which people to this day can bitterly hate each other. But when it comes to the actual central texts, the variety is truly negligible. There's a small handful of fringe groups that actually have a truly different version of the Bible. I think, for example, of the Palmarians, and for example, the followers of Reverend Ousley. There are likely more such groups somewhere on the earth, but those are apparently so fringe that even I don't know about them. So that maybe gives you an idea about the nature of the hostility between Jews and Samaritans. So, if you want a modern retelling of the Good Samaritan, it's not about some foreigner who does good, but rather about an enormous heretic who does good. So today, maybe a pious Christian man was going down from Nashville to Knoxville and fell into the hands of a violent gang. They stripped him, beat him, and took off, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, an extremely based theologian with all the correct theological views was going down that road. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, an internet apologist who destroys all his opponents with facts and logic, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a heretic, like maybe an LDS member or someone extremely liberal, while traveling came upon him, and when he saw him, he was moved with compassion. He went to him and bandaged the wounds, treating them with oil and wine, or maybe not wine if he's a Mormon, but he treats the wounds anyway. Then he drove him to a hotel and took care of him. The next day he took out maybe $200, gave them to the man at the front desk and said, "You guys please take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?